The Romans spanned the sacred river. Now they are destroying our way of life. All of our gods are angry. We must never forget what has been done to us.
With Akko's help, construction of the town has progressed rapidly.
The bridge is burning! The bridge is burning! The bridge is burning!
Bring the horse
Okay,
around.
water! Okay!
What a terrible accident.
Yes.
Perhaps it was no accident at all.
Perhaps you are mistaken.
Let us hope so. For everyone's sake.
This is the Pont du Gard, a 2,000-year-old aqueduct near Nîmes in France, which has become one of this country's most popular attractions. A critical priority for any city is a constant supply of fresh water. And the covered trough at the top of the Pont du Gard was once part of a 30-mile-long aqueduct that brought water to Nîmes from high up in the mountains. The key to aqueduct design is gravity. Once the engineers located a source of water in the mountains, they built their aqueduct with a gentle downward slope to ensure that the water would flow along its entire length. The aqueduct rested on a series of arches which were supported above the varying terrain on massive stone piers. But when the aqueduct had to cross a river or a ravine and it became either impossible or impractical to build those stone piers, the engineers instead built larger arches. And if necessary, they built several larger arches, such as we see here at the Pont du Gard. An arch is composed of separate wedge-shaped blocks that are cut and fitted together in a curve. The blocks are held in place by a wooden frame until they are locked together at the top with a keystone. The weight of the arch at the top presses down and pushes the sides outward. But when you support these sides, the outward forces are counteracted. Now the wooden centering can be removed because the entire structure is stable. And with this design, the Romans could span almost any terrain. The Romans didn't invent the arch, but once they understood its potential, they used it again and again to span both interior and exterior space and to carry water literally hundreds of miles if that's what was needed. When water from an aqueduct reached the city, it first went to a large holding tank or reservoir, like this one at Pompeii. Now the water entered the tank from this side. It flowed across the floor through these three channels and out through these three passages. This one led to the homes of the rich, that one to the baths and public lavatories, and this one to the public fountains. Now, if there was a shortage of water, the passage to the homes of the rich would be shut off first, then the passage to the baths and public lavatories. This ensured that the public fountains, which served the majority of the city's residents, would be the last to run dry. That, at least, was the theory. Here's one of the many public fountains that line the streets of Pompeii and where most of the city's residents got their water. Of course, none of them work now, but providing water for drinking and cooking was one of the municipal services expected of a proper Roman town. There was even a sophisticated drainage system that channeled wastewater to rivers or the sea. This level of sanitation wasn't equaled again for almost 2,000 years. Another Roman priority was the bathhouse, which was far more than just a place to get clean. Bathhouses, or thermae, began with subterranean passages containing furnaces and pipes to carry the water to the rooms above. Slaves would have stoked these fires continuously to heat the water for the hot room, or caldarium. Bathers would luxuriate in hot water pools like this one, cleansing their bodies and presumably their minds as well. The hot water and steam were carried through clay pipes in the floors and walls that warmed this room and the next, the tepidarium, where the water and room temperature were kept comfortably warm. And if you wanted a refreshing cold water plunge, you would go to this room, the frigidarium. In the baths, you'd meet with friends, discuss business or politics, work out, get a rub down, or just escape from the cares of the day. We've been in the main bathhouse at Ostia. Both men and women would use these elaborate facilities, although not at the same time. And of course, we've only been talking about affluent citizens. The working classes would rarely have had an opportunity to enjoy the baths, or much else for that matter. They'd have been far too busy just keeping them functioning, along with everything else that made these cities work so well.
There has been so much progress in Vabonia, I can hardly believe only a year has passed. We're experimenting with reservoirs fashioned out of concrete.
And what exactly is concrete, Marcus Fabricius?
A mixture of stone and cement, which can be moulded to any desired shape.
Extraordinary.
It was demonstrated to me by an engineer from Rome. A wooden support is erected and brick reinforcing arches are constructed over it. The entire structure is lined with flat bricks and wooden forms and then covered with this concrete. When the concrete hardens, we will repeat the process over and over until the entire reservoir is complete. It can be moulded to any shape, yet will retain the strength and solidity of stone at a fraction of the weight and cost.
What will you Romans come up with next?
Many people live in completed houses. And for the first time in my life, I have a house of my own with all its comforts. And this garden in the back lets in much sunshine and takes advantage of the cool breezes.
One could get lumbago from these drafts.
Lawrence, you are always complaining.
Praise the household gods, he always provides me with ample to complain of.
Someday, when I can afford it, I shall have a proper slave. With my new elevated status in life, I can partake in luxuries I could only dream of up till now. And Gaius Valerius has invited prominent Gauls to use the new bathhouse, donated by their exalted countryman Licinus. It certainly was generous of Licinus to build this bathhouse.
Licinus is always generous with other people's money.
What do you mean?
He has taxed all the Gauls to ruin. But since this does not affect you Romans, perhaps you do not care.
But Licinus must have a plan.
Yes, to become rich. Make no mistake, I have seen his kind before. He would sell out his own people if it would...
Acco Bouvex, my humble master, Licinus, requests the honour of your presence in Marseille 2 days hence, at the 3rd hour after dawn, together with General Gaius Valerius.
See? There you are.
When the fox invites the rabbit to dine, the rabbit should first know the menu.
And therefore, I shall require 2 months' additional taxes from everyone.
Have we not already paid through the year?
That is an interesting point. As the month called December means the 10th, we will add 2 more following it to fill out the year. Of course, in the spirit of harmony, Roman citizens will contribute as well.
That is preposterous.
It is not preposterous if I say it is not.
Surely you cannot mean...
Surely I can mean as I wish. Do not forget yourself, gentlemen. I am Licinus, procurator of Gaul, the representative of Imperator Caesar Augustus himself.
I tell you, this new tax will not sit well with my people.
Nor with mine, but they will only grumble. You must deal with your countrymen to keep the peace.
Though I am a chieftain, I do not command the loyalty of all.
Such wanton destruction, and such a great act of generosity. What could it mean to break off the right hand? Who would do such a thing?
Perhaps they who have had it done to them.
But now we all have peace and opportunity under Rome.
Not all the Celts feel that way.
Aidan.
The Druids certainly do not.
The Druids, they hide in the woods and pray to trees. They're all living in the past.
Look, I'll see you tonight. Second hour after sunset?
Yes.
And if perhaps your daughter is not otherwise engaged?
My daughter will be pleased to accept your generous invitation. What?
Set one more place for dinner.
Oh, of course. Why not? Let's have 20 more. No, 30. What's Caesar's army doing? I'm sure there's a garrison that hasn't eaten.
Just one moment. I'll see to the delay.
Believe me, Master, I want this to work even more than you do.
What are you talking about?
To impress the young lady into marrying you, heaven help her.
Who said anything about marriage?
I've seen the way you regard her.
I could not marry her. She's not a Roman.
You'd best marry someone, or I shall die of exhaustion. And then you'll have to do your own work.
You're not overly burdened.
I'm a slave. You treat me like a wife. Oh, of course. Why not? Rain.
This large house in Pompeii has a 2-story central hall with a roof that is open to the sky so that rainwater can fall into this pool called the impluvium. The water then goes through this hole into an underground tank where it is stored until needed. We're in the home of Paquius Proculus, a local government representative and the owner of several small businesses. Most Roman houses of this size faced inward, away from the street noise. The sleeping rooms and dining rooms were in this, the atrium area of the house. But the most impressive part is out here. Much of Roman life was lived out of doors. The gardens of Pompeii are among the most famous in the world, and every wealthy home had one, surrounded by a covered walkway called a peristyle. On warm days, the master and his family would sit underneath the broad overhanging roof while the garden soaked up the rain and flourished in the sun.
If you were well-to-do and lived in a prosperous city like Pompeii, that was about as good as life could be in the ancient world. In fact, you could even use your house as an extra source of income. Ground floor rooms that faced the street were often used as shops and rented out by the owner. In several of the houses, we see wine and olive presses, indicating lucrative cottage industries run right from these elegant homes.
What made the wealthy domestic lifestyle work so well, however, was slave labor. Houses like this would have had many slaves to do the cleaning, serving, and other chores. For the most part, the lot of the Roman slave was as deplorable as the lot of all slaves throughout history. Although in cities like Pompeii, some slaves became skilled craftsmen. Others even owned certain industries.
A few slaves were accomplished artists and produced beautiful sculpture and paintings. This impressive residence was once owned by the Vettius brothers, who we think had once been slaves. But this kind of upward social mobility was definitely the exception rather than the rule.